Yo, what's good, Knicks Nation? Welcome back to another Game of the Week preview. You already know what it is, man. Second night of a back-to-back for the New York Knicks, and, the NBA schedulers like to put us through torture, so for three times this season, as we discussed on post-game, they have to have the Knicks facing the Cavs on the second night of a back-to-back, so it's going to be a grueling task, but hey, let's cover this game. We got my guy, Evan Dammerel, the man, the creator of Write Down Euclid with me today to break down this game. So make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. All right, Evan, how you doing today, man? Cavs had a nice break. Knicks did it. How you feeling today, though?
Like the Cavs, a little well rested. How are you doing?
I am not well rested because for
Like
the
the
people who don't
Knicks.
know, did a post game. We did post game until what 12:30, and then had to get ready for a quick turnaround time for 7:25 a.m. preview of this game. But that's just the dedication to the show, man. A dedication to the craft, as you are right now, being up so early. But it's another day, man. Another day,
Yeah,
another game of basketball. But let's get into it, man.
let's do it.
Knicks Cavs have played twice already. Both times, the Knicks have lost. First time was a close battle where the Knicks lost, in the fourth quarter. Second time, it was not even close whatsoever. Now we get another rematch. Is there any thoughts that you're taking from the first two matchups into this one?
It's going to be a little tricky just because the Cavs have been, their record maybe wouldn't indicate it because they are the best team in the Eastern Conference, but they have been up and down since coming out of the All-Star break.
Mm.
And New York has been dealing with the loss of Jalen Brunson. I mean, if you look at it in the last 5 games, Josh Hart, a key guy off the bench for them, is their third leading scorer. Cat, a guy we talked about quite a bit in terms of just points per game, is their third leading. Excuse me, Cat's the third leading scorer in the last 5 games. Is looking at minutes per games there, but it's just more so the fact that Cleveland is a little up and down. The Knicks, I think, have been pretty steady, I'd say. I think that's fair to say. They've been doing all right without Jalen Brunson out there. And I think it's going to be an interesting matchup. Yes, the Knicks have tired legs on their side heading into this game. Yes, Cleveland does have home court on their side in this one. But both these teams are 4-1 in their last 5. And I think it's also just noteworthy the fact that the Cavs are not going to have their third leading scorer in this game, Ty Jerome, who is averaging 18.5 points per game in the last 5 games for them. And it's a little weird to say that, like, yeah, a bench piece is kind of integral to their success, but Jerome's just kind of been that guy for them this season. And I think he could be a bit of an X factor. And sure, the Knicks' bench is a little bit depleted with Hart now start in the starting lineup with Brunson out, but it's going to be just a weird matchup, I think, just because the Cavs are kind of, I don't want to say I'm going through an identity crisis, but they are not as dominant as they once were at the beginning of the season. And maybe this is a different matchup, especially with it could be one of those situations where the Knicks are feeling a little bit more juiced just because they won their late recent game against Philly and they are, a little bit not rusty, and the Cavs could be taken a little bit by surprise by that.
Mm. And just to clarify for the people, I know in the comment section, because they're going to hear, wait a minute, Josh Hart's been starting this entire season. This guy hasn't been watching the Knicks at all. And it's like, of course, well, Evan covers the Cavs, but he taps into the NBA regularly. And I think what you're saying is that with Hart being in the starting rotation this season and no Jalen Brunson, the bench is not
Yeah.
as strong as what it
Yeah,
is,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I meant. Yeah.
yeah,
My
yeah. No,
apologies.
it's all good, man.
No, you're all good, man.
I'm just trying to help you so that way you don't get attacked in the comments and people are like, who are we bringing on the show, man? Let's be respectful, people. All right. But to your point, I know you're telling me the Cavs have been all up and down. Knicks are now 8-5 without Jalen Brunson. And some may question, the competition that the Knicks have had to face, especially since they've lost some tough teams, to the tough teams like Golden State Warriors. They've lost to the Clippers, and then on top of that, they even lost to two teams that had no business in beating them, which was the Spurs and the Hornets. But look, the Knicks have been they're treading very well without Jalen Brunson.
Yeah.
I'll say that they're treading very well. I would say that the biggest takeaway for the Knicks in this stretch without Jalen Brunson is that they look more cohesive as a team. And on top of that, OG, Mikal Bridges, those guys have been really showing out, especially OG, man.
Oh yeah,
OG has
OG.
just been on another level since the last
Oh,
10 games. I mean,
say I'm looking at his last five and 29.8 points per game ain't nothing to sneeze at, man. Like that's gonna be a headache for Cleveland to figure out.
for sure. But here's this one for 10 games, just to give you a context of like the numbers. He's averaging 24 points, shooting 50% from the field, 49.4 to be exact. So it's actually closer to 49. My apologies. Shooting 37% from downtown on five, what is it, 7 attempts per game. And then he's getting to the free throw line 6 times per game, knocking him down at a 90% rate, getting you 5 boards, 2 assists, getting you over 2 steals and 1 block per game. So he's been all over the place, man. He's been an absolute dog, as people have to call him in Knicks Nation. And he's going to be a problem, I feel like, for Cleveland, especially if they've been up and down. Bridge has been pretty solid, especially adding as a playmaker without Brunson. He looks to be getting more comfortable since he now to get his usage that gets to go up, and then guys have been pouring in, man. And then getting some slightly impressive, play from DeLon Wright and Tyler Kolek off the bench. Shamit looks like to be coming around these last 3 games, so it'll be an interesting matchup for the Cavs tonight, man, between the Knicks and the Cavs. Uh, from a Cavs perspective, though, do you feel concerned if these two teams were to meet in the playoffs, even though the Cavs had defeated them the way they have this season?
That's a good question, just because regular season only takes you so far, as we know. And when these teams last met in the playoffs, the conversation was the Cavs can't handle physicality, they can't handle toughness, et cetera, et cetera. And rebounding was a big issue, especially against New York, just because whether it's last time they played, it was Mitchell Robinson and Josh Hart that kind of ate the soul out of Cleveland in terms of the rebounding battle. And now you have Cat in that equation, which is just another big body. You have Precious as well, who sure maybe isn't the most dominant rebounder, but he's still going to get you some boards. He's a big body that can crash the glass for you if need be. And again, just Josh Hart is just continues to be a question mark for everybody in the NBA, because a guy that size shouldn't be averaging as many boards per game as he does. He just has an unreal nose for it. But I think it would be an interesting matchup for sure. I would wonder how far each team could go the distance. And like you had said, the Knicks, excuse me, are treading water really well. They're doing well. They're seeing a lot of just guys standing up between Bridges and Anunoby, and then of course you have Cat as a regular star as well. Standing up with Jalen Brunson out, like this is working really nicely for New York, and who knows? But if these two teams met in the playoffs, it would be an interesting matchup for sure. I think it would be definitely a challenge of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, maybe to excite some of those playoff demons that maybe still have to them. Especially Allen, just because we all know the infamous meme came out of that Knicks series. So we'll see how that goes there. But if these two teams met in the playoffs, it would definitely be, you're not thinking like, oh, this is a team winning in 4 or 5. This would be a best of 7. And I think, yeah, these regular season games can definitely serve as like a template or maybe a server to figure out like, there's some matchups you can exploit or things you can kind of do, just because it's going to be a little bit weird. It's going to be a little bit goofy. And I think that's the beauty of the NBA. And I think the fact that the Knicks are kind of rising without their, one of their integral superstars is really, really impressive. And I think the Cavs just kind of maybe having a bit of a look in the mirror moment and trying to figure out who they actually are and who they want to be is interesting too. And, come postseason time, realistically speaking, these guys would not meet until the second round at best. I mean, God, if something absolutely awful happened to New York, is not to poo poo the Knicks here, but the Cavs are clinched the top 2 spots in the Eastern Conference. But it would be interesting to see how they're riding out of that first round series too. Like how healthy is either team heading into this? And if you're New York, you have to feel pretty good, especially because this team is still clicking, it's still humming. And like credit's due to Tom Thibodeau. Like they have a good formula for success, even without like one of their key stars, where they can just kind of keep gelling or just ask another guy to step up. Whereas Cleveland has done that too. It's just also been a little tricky, just because if the shots aren't falling, like it gets really ugly really fast for the Cavs.
And I think the thing that, what from a Knicks perspective they'll look when it comes to the matchup with the Cavs is that we haven't had Mitchell Robinson in the first 2 matchups. And with his return, The defense looks different. There's more of a paint presence now. Even last night, I know it's against a woeful Sixers team. Even when he first returned against Memphis, when he's out there, he's deterring Ja from, attacking the rim. Any other team where he's inserted into the lineup, he's deterring guys. He's helping our perimeter defenders like Hart, Bridges, OG be more aggressive just because they don't have to worry about having Cat back there, who's not anything close to Mitchell Robinson defensively. So for
Mhm.
me, it's like I think this makes the matchup a little bit more intriguing since Cleveland likes to run with more of their guards, right? Be more
Mhm.
guard heavy, getting Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland going downhill quickly. Even Ty Jerome, who's been, fantastic this season. With a guy like Mitchell Robinson, I think that changes the matchup trajectory completely. I don't think we're gonna see Mitchell Robinson tonight, so we won't get a little test of that just because he has not been playing on the second night of a back to back just because he has returned from injury. So I think what we will see tonight is Karl Anthony Towns returning, even though he didn't play last night, and Mitchell Robinson being out for this one. So it'll definitely be an interesting showcasing tonight of what this postseason can be. So it's the Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning for another game of the week preview with me on the other side is my guy Evan Dammerel. He created right down Euclid. So if you want good coverage, great coverage, I should say, of Cleveland sports, make sure to go check out his work over there, especially if you're into the NBA and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So with everything being said, and you touched on it a little bit, how nervous are you with Cleveland right now with their up and down play going into the postseason? You think this is a little bump that they'll get right back on track, or is this something to be of major concern?
I'm not super concerned. Maybe the biggest concern is like Donovan Mitchell's shot kind of being up and down and Darius Garland kind of struggling to find a rhythm at times. Like that's something that can be remedied, I think, especially with the playoffs and you play an opponent a certain amount of times, you kind of learn how teams are going to defend you and how you can find your shots in the certain spots too. And I think that's just an adjustment no matter what. But this is a team that has been consistently winning and winning at a dominant level throughout the regular season. And I think once they clinch that playoff berth, once they clinched more or less one of the top two spots in the Eastern Conference, the Cavs kind of pulled the reins back a little bit. And Kenny Atkinson has said this quite a bit. They're not really fixated. Like they don't care if they are the number one seed in the East. They'd rather be the healthiest team they can be heading into the postseason. And the Jerome situation is a little murky just because it went from just a generic knee injury, I believe, to knee tendonitis. But
Mm,
then Atkinson said it's wear and tear. But in the absence of him, you still see guys like DeAndre Hunter stepping up. You see Sam Merrill stepping up, and you see Max Drew stepping up. And I think it's going to be an interesting test of Kenny Atkinson's coaching come playoff time because he has said like it's a bit of a struggle for him because he's a guy who plays 10, 11 players most nights, if not every night. And
mm.
he realistically knows he has to scale that back come playoff time. But I think there's just, they're kind of waiting for the playoffs to start at this point. And I know, like, no disrespect to the remaining 7 or 8 teams left on, or 7 or 8 matchups they have left on the regular season schedule, but like they're kind of just biding their time. They're waiting for that little break they get when the play-in tournament happens, where they can kind of fully rest and recover, kind of implement their game plan for who they have to face in the first round completely, and then they're really focused on that. But like this matchup against New York, as you had noted, like it's going to be a playoff caliber, quote unquote, regular season matchup. Sure, there's no Mitchell Robinson, which I think is a great shot on your part. Like, I think he is certainly going to be an X factor, and we'll see if he plays when the Knicks host the Cavs mid-April. And if that does, like, yeah, we'll definitely get maybe an idea of how Robinson responds to that. But like, if you're Atkinson, like, how much do you want to show your hand to Tom Thibodeau in the event that like you do end up playing each other in the playoffs, or you're a guy like Atkinson who hasn't been very shy about showing his hand to a lot of
Mm.
opposing coaches because he puts it this way, like he learned from Ty Lue in his time with the Clippers. He's just like, I try to make a playoff adjustment every single day where I try to like try something new. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, we'll put that in our back pocket. We'll consider it later. So the long story short, to answer your question, no, I'm not overly concerned. This is a team that seems like they're not complacent with their success. I think there is tangible frustration of maybe the 4 game slide they recently endured, or maybe the loss they recently suffered to Detroit, which credit's due. That's a good Pistons team, but the Cavs know what kind of team they want to be, where they want to be in the playoffs, which is hopefully competing for a championship. But they are also realistic in the fact that like they have to be the healthiest team possible entering the playoffs to achieve that goal.
It's so interesting that you talk like say, does Kenny Atkinson want to show their hand? We're now going through like you guys are just trying to cruise until we get to the postseason. Knicks are almost not really in that way, but like with Jalen Brunson out, with Mitchell Robinson not playing back to back, there is some load management that we're seeing towards the tail end
Mm.
of this season that, is a little, I guess, shocking for a Tom Thibodeau team.
Says
So
Tibbs feeling well.
I think with the forced injury to Jalen Brunson, Miles McBride, campaign, and with Mitch returning from injury and needing him for the postseason, I think the front office is like, you know what, man, do we really need to go, balls to the wall for all 82 games? I don't think so. So thank God for that. I'll just say
Yeah.
that.
Well, you know what? Sometimes your biggest demon is yourself, and maybe the front office stepping in is the right thing. But it's just you never not get off the jokes about load management and Tom Thibodeau just because there'll be a guy at some point in the playoffs playing 48 minutes whole.
My
So
man, it is the regular season. We've seen 44 minutes for these guys. So, look, we're not going to see the true test between this Cavs team, this Knicks team tonight, just because guys are missing. I just
yeah,
mentioned the guys who I'm talking about. You're talking about guys, getting rest for this matchup too, and just trying to be ready for the postseason. Even talk about Ty Jerome, like he's being managed just because of the injury, and we know about his injury history and how fantastic he's been this year. So, talk about him being your X factor. So, I see that both teams are there's gonna be some competition. There's gonna be a little bit of a
yeah,
chippiness. Even on the broadcast last night, Walt Clyde Frazier said that you do want to see this team be competitive against the Cavs. So it is ESPN. They can't go completely, water down this event for ESPN.
no,
I'm sure the investors will not be thrilled if people are turning off their TVs by the half if we're not getting the product that we're supposed to be seeing. But I think from a Knicks perspective, you're talking about showing your hand. I don't think Tibbs is going to show his hand at all, like in what he
yeah,
wants to do either. I think he's going to wait for the postseason for that. But even the way that it's looks like the Knicks have a date with the Celtics in the second round anyway. But still, if you're thinking that this team could turn it up to another gear, I don't think you want to show anything, especially when you think both teams, if they're exhausted, they meet each other in the ECF.
yeah,
Like you want to make sure that all your strategic like I guess your the secret files that you got. Let me put it that way. The secret files that
yeah,
you got in the back cabinet are not displayed yet. So it'll be good, man. It'll be good. It'll
yeah.
be good.
It'll be a fun game no matter what. Like you said, I think there's going to be competition. There's going to be chippiness. There's always that recent history that these two teams have. I know we're a few years removed from it at this point, and they're both in dramatically, especially in New York's case, dramatically different spots. Just because Cat wasn't a part of that playoff team last time around, and so it'll be an interesting matchup. And like you said, like if these two teams were to collide in the Eastern Conference Finals, and health is going to play a big factor in that. But yeah, I think not showing your hand is a good thing, and I think Tom Thibodeau is definitely aware of that, just because he is a battle tested coach. He has coached in the playoffs many. This isn't his first time around. We'll just put it that way. He knows what he's doing, and so it'll be interesting to see. And I am interested to see X factor wise who steps up. I think DeAndre Hunter is going to be a big name for the Cavs, just because he is a guy who stepped up quite a bit for Cleveland reserve wise, especially with Ty Jerome out the last handful of games. But I think Max Strus is a guy worth watching too, just because if Strus's shot isn't falling, and in their last five, he's only averaging 8.3 points per game, but he is the third leading assist man for the Cavs in the last three games with 3.8 assists per game. And I think against the Clippers, he had close to double digit assists by the end of the game, just because again his shot wasn't falling, but he just kept moving the rock, and he has a little bit of that tertiary playmaker for Cleveland, where it's mostly Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland handling the playmaking responsibilities. But if you have that guy who can be that connector piece or keep the ball moving, especially with more of a bench heavy lineup, like that can be a bit of a deciding factor between this game, or in this game between the Cavs and the Knicks, just because Yeah, you'll just see what happens. Is like who can move the rock a little bit better, who can give you that little extra juice, maybe that +1 play, if you will. And I think Strus can kind of be that guy there too. And also, if his shot's falling, he's just much more lethal. But I think he's just kind of showing more and more that he is worth more than just what his perimeter game gives him. He's just a basketball player. So it'll be a fun matchup no matter what, even if they are missing key guys like Jerome and Robinson, who, yeah, for the casual onlooker, may not seem like they're big impact players, but they're two guys that can make a difference no matter what. And obviously, like you're missing Jalen Brunson in this matchup too. If you're New York, it kind of muddies the water a little bit on what this could be if it was a potential playoff matchup, but it's still going to be a fun game nonetheless.
So is that your final answer, Evan? Is DeAndre Hunter your X factor? I
Yeah,
know we do this at the end of the show, but I'm
yeah,
gonna.
we do.
All
No,
right.
I think it's Hunter. I think it's Struce. I think it's a combination of those two, but I think Hunter is it's been a pretty clean fit with him in Cleveland, and it's worked out really nicely. And I think not having Jerome available, they've leaned on him a bit more, especially because of his size, because he can play 2 through 4 if you really want to get real with it. And he does bring a lot of lineup versatility for Cleveland. I think that just is really underrated, especially in a Kenny Atkinson type offense.
All right. Let's get the X factors out of the way. So you're going with DeAndre Hunter for this game. For me, I would say I can't say OG just because he's been balling out. I
It's not a
think
bad pick, though. He's been awesome.
he's been awesome, but my thing is though, like if you've been consistently good over 10 games, like is that really an X factor? And
Fair.
you know what I mean? I think the big X factor for me in this matchup is going to be Mikal Bridges, man. And if you're not going to have Mitchell Robinson out there to clean a lot of the defensive woes, as I'm expecting now. They could shock me and put Mitch out there on the second night of a back to back. That would be very shocking.
Hmm.
But if he's not out there and you're going to put Bridges on Donovan Mitchell, that's just a lot of work since Bridges always takes the top assignment. So I'm going to go with Bridges being that X factor. He's been my X factor for most of the games this season just because of his up and down play. Now he's been more consistent offensively, and he's
Hmm.
been better with Mitch back there, back on the back line defensively. But if he's not going to be there tonight in this matchup in particular, he's going to be my X factor, and hopefully he shows out, man, because you just want some sort of semblance saying, hey, against a good team, even when we're not fully healthy, you're locked in and you're ready to compete. So I'm going with Mikal Bridges for tonight. All right.
I
So
think
it's an
that's a
ex-
good shout. And it's just, like you know, the Cavs are guard heavy, even without Jerome. It's still the Mitchell and Garland show. And Bridges is going to be a factor, even if his offensive game isn't showing. He's going to have to step up defensively to slow down what is a two-headed beast guard wise for Cleveland.
for sure. Salute to Knicks Nation. Thank you all for tuning for another game of the week preview. With me on the other side is my guy, Evan Dammerall. You can find him covering Cleveland sports right on Right Down Euclid. It's a newsletter. Make sure to go sign up for that. And good people at home, remember about our sponsor for today, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. Let me tell you what I love about Underdog Fantasy. It covers all sports, man. You can create a ticket for any single sport, and you can mix and match all sports. You can choose anywhere between 2 to 8 players, and the more players you choose, the bigger your return is on your ticket. So all you got to do is just choose any player, choose any stat, just choose higher or lower if you think that if the player is going to achieve that goal. So for tonight, let's say you got Mikal Bridges for 22 and a half points. Do you think he's going to go higher or lower? And that's all you got to do. It goes for rebounds, points, assists, and in any other sport too, it's the same thing. So you could include hockey, right? You could include now you got baseball starting back. So you could talk about hits, home runs, RBIs, steals. You could do all that for this. So that's why I love Underdog Fantasy. So make sure to support our sponsor. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. You also can't forget about the fantasy draft. Put on your GM caps as well. All right, Evan, let's wrap this thing up. We know these teams love to live in the paint, getting downhill. I'm curious to see how that battle matches up today. I think that's going to be where the battleground is for this matchup. What do you think on that?
I think it's a good shout, especially with Darius Garland, like as I had noted before, and Donovan Mitchell kind of being up and down shot wise. Like there will be instances where either player maybe will press. And I think if you're the Knicks, you want them to press because that will throw off Cleveland's offensive flow entirely. But you have two bigs. You have a guy who is an first time All Star in Evan Mobley, a former All Star in Jared Allen. You have Cat, you have Josh Hart, you have Bridges, you have and Anobi. Like, yeah, those are guys who can also hurt you from the perimeter as well. But like those are bigger bodies. They will, I mean, I think any NBA player would rather, try and attack the basket and maybe either draw contact and get to the line or get an easy layup or dunk or anything else. But I think, yeah, I think in the paint, it's going to be defined, especially if you're the Knicks. You want to poke and prod Cleveland's defensive back line of Allen and Mobley. And if you can get either of those two in foul trouble, which I think is a rare skill that both of them have, was they can defend very well without fouling, it can really determine the flow of the matchup and everything else, especially if like you don't have that maybe paint presence like you do, as you had noted before, in Mitchell Robinson in this matchup, just because like that empowers other players to kind of know that they have that safety blanket behind them, so it can kind of counterbalance it a little bit, so you don't have to maybe worry as much about Cleveland shutting off your water defensively in the paint. And then if the Knicks kind of find momentum and start rolling there, it becomes a lot easier for them from there on out. So I think that's something that's worth watching. And also just on the inverse, like it's Bridges and Anunoby. Like, how are they going to encourage Mitchell and Garland to throw off the Cavs offensively by forcing the press their shots, but also, do that dance and dance on that thin line a little bit of like, okay, how do we make sure like we get these guys to press and maybe take some bad shots, but also not let them find any momentum or rhythm on the perimeter, because yeah, they're both all-star caliber guards, they're all NBA caliber guards too, and like you gotta tempt fate a little bit by encouraging them to shoot, but hopefully you defend them well enough that they're tough shots. And I think they're both just big enough bodies where, and Josh Hart too in this equation, that they can kind of just slow down either player and keep the Cavs from getting rolling offensively. And then on the inverse, it's just Mitchell and Garland. Like, how do you get your shot going against a lot of lengthy perimeter defenders? And it's going to be a tough matchup. And it's as we had said before, neither coach is probably going to show their hand completely, and in Tibbs' case, not at all. But it's going to be interesting to see how they maybe play the game within the game to get their offenses rolling and, keep their defenses stable, just so neither the opposing offense doesn't become like out of control too quickly.
Absolutely. And, I think the other big factor in this matchup, too, is going to be just how does this team handle the three-point shooting barrage? The Cavs just demolished them the last time they matched up. Cavs just shot a crazy percentage from downtown. Let me just pull up those numbers right here so I could get it accurate. Cavs shot a whopping 51% from downtown on 19 of 37. So hopefully the Knicks perimeter defense can be better against this team too, and Cleveland just doesn't get super hot. In our last discussion, I did tell you about that, and the Knicks didn't shoot too bad. They shot 36% from the field with 28 attempts, but 51% is a hell of a scoring output to overcome. So hopefully defensively, the Knicks can do that. So it will be a little bit of a blend of an outside-inside game, and I think the best way to quell that is to use Karl Anthony Towns. Obviously, OG Bridges, they're going to be impactful, but I think you need to get some easy shots too. And I think Karl Anthony Towns is going to be a big matchup. And that's why, he's part of my key matchup for tonight. So let's just hop right into that. It's going to be Karl Anthony Towns and Evan Mobley for me. I don't see Jarrett Allen being the guy guarding Cat, just because you need that lateral capability. You need, potentially your defensive player of the year guarding one of the best offensive talents in the league. So Karl Anthony Towns, Evan Mobley, my key matchup of tonight, and I'm looking forward to this defensive and offensive battle. What do you think about that matchup?
I think it's a great matchup. I think how Mobley responds to that defensive pressure, just because he is a guy that I think has answered a lot of the questions surrounding him and his game, Mobley, that is, in terms of, are you comfortable taking those perimeter shots? And there are instances where he tries to maybe match opposing big shot for shot on the perimeter if they are a stretchier 3-point shooting big man. And in Cat's case, like it's an interesting defensive challenge too, just because Mobley is a little bit more multifaceted. If his shot isn't falling, he tries to do it with the rock. He tries to get going on the interior, and also like the Cavs will run plays to get Mobley kind of finding a rhythm or some type of flow, whether wherever it is on the floor. And then on the inverse of it, whether it's Mobley or it's Allen, the Cavs kind of stick to Cat on defense. Like, I am interested to see like how does Cat maybe pick apart that matchup in terms of, if it's Allen, can you make a quasi-traditional big. And I say quasi just because Allen has shown comfort defending on the perimeter. He doesn't take perimeter shots, of course, but he still is comfortable defending out there in space. But like, can Cat exploit that matchup a little bit, or can they create mismatches where he's able to get cleaner looks on offense? So it just makes it a little bit easier for him, just because it's not easy. I would fully understand for opposing teams to say it's not easy to try and figure out how to defeat the Cavs backline defensively. But for me, I think the matchup still is going to be Donovan Mitchell versus whether it's Hart and Anunoby or Bridges as well. It's whoever the Knicks, and I would assume all three of them spend time defending Mitchell. But how does Mitchell kind of poke and prod and figure out how to like exploit that matchup defensive or offensively so he can get easier looks and easier looks at the bucket, just because his shot has been a little funky lately, where there's times where, as I've said before, he has pressed and maybe like it has killed some of the flow the Cavs have had offensively. And sure, he's stepped up rebounding wise or playmaking wise as well to kind of help with other issues, especially if the shot isn't falling. But if you're able to get rolling, and I think, for Mitchell, it's always going to be personal because he grew up a New York kid. He grew up a Knicks fan, even though he'll say he was a Cavs fan because of LeBron growing up. But either way, like, it's always personal for him just because he's a New York kid. And I think, just to kind of go blow for blow with the team you grew up watching and, kind of idolizing, hoping you play for one day, like, it's always going to be a little bit extra and a little bit extra fun for you or him in this case. And I'm interested to see how he just responds to some of the pressure New York throws at him.
Yeah, no, I really hope these two teams meet in the playoffs, man. It would be a movie just with all the storylines that go behind it. But I agree with you, man. This is gonna be a good one, man. I agree with
Yeah,
I agree with the analysis. It's gonna be a good one. Evan, my man, I always appreciate your time, my man. Thank you for always coming through. Please let the listeners know where they can find you. If you got any work up and coming, we should be on the lookout for.
For sure. Yeah, as you had mentioned several times, I am the founder and editor-in-chief, and I wear a lot of hats at Right Down Euclid. We're a nonprofit sports publication where we try to go beyond the scores and so much more and provide Clevelanders or Cleveland fans, no matter where you are, coverage of your favorite teams and what they're doing on and off the court, and also just, the sub-hockey communities and the communities surrounding those teams, whether it's fans or, just people that are passionate or enthusiastic about covering this team or talking about this team. We're just, really weaving into the social fabric of how sports kind of just like, it is the lifeblood of a lot of cities, and Cleveland is no exception to that. But you can find me on Twitter, or I guess X if you still want to call it that, at am.evan. That's usually my social handle for anywhere. If you want to follow me on Instagram, sure, I don't care. I don't post that much, but you know what? Sure, rock, make my day. I'll say I got a new follower. I'm like, I wonder who the heck this is. And if I see you're a Knicks fan, I'm like, oh, I guess that makes sense. So, but either way, no, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, my man. And I agree. If these two teams met in the playoffs, it would have to be the Eastern Conference Finals at this point. And if we're having that conversation, there's probably going to be some blood in the water by then, but it'll be a fun matchup no matter what. If it's the regular season, the playoffs, even if it's the preseason, these two teams, there's always storylines surrounding them, so there's always going to be something to talk about heading up to the matchup. And no matter what, even if you're a Knicks fan and these last two games maybe didn't go the way you wanted, it's an entertaining matchup if you're just a pure basketball fan. And hey, if New York gets a win or two in the column before the regular season wraps up, it just adds more intrigue, especially if these two teams meet in the conference finals.
Absolutely. Salute to Evan, man. Salute to my guy, Evan Damaro. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And make sure to support our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code KFTV to get up to $1,000 in instant bonus cash and a free pick. And look, if you can catch this show on YouTube, you know where we also are? On every audio listening platform: Apple, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, Alexa, Stitcher, you name it. We're all over the place, so make sure to go check us out. You have no excuse to miss a show. And you already know what's going to happen later tonight. We got play-by-play and post-game, so make sure to stay locked in for this coverage of this Knicks-Cavs matchup, and we'll catch you later tonight, all right? All right, everyone. We out.